Good morning, everyone. I'm Olivia Moore. I'm the Programme Manager for the MENASP Network, the MENA Social Policy Network. And it's my pleasure today to welcome you to today's webinar. We will be joined by our host, Professor Mayssa Jallad, but she has unfortunately had some issues in getting here on time, some car issues, so she'll be joining us shortly. But in the meantime, it's my pleasure to introduce you to today's webinar and our speakers today. So this webinar is part of a series of showcasing the findings and the exciting results from our MENASP Research Fund. And we have today the team from PROCOL Lebanon. So we're really excited to have them share their amazing project. It's a very interesting project, and there'll be an opportunity for Q&A at the end. So we'd really encourage you to have your questions ready. Feel free to ask them as we go along in the chat. And then at the end, there'll be an opportunity to ask them as part of the Q&A session, but we'll leave all the questions till the end. So I'm going to now introduce our speakers. We have Nikolay Mintchev, who is the Principal Research Fellow at the Institute for Global Prosperity, UCL. He's a core team member of PROCOL Lebanon, a transdisciplinary research program aiming to develop new concepts and methods for addressing social and economic challenges in Lebanon. His latest work focuses on social theories of prosperity, participatory methods, especially citizen social science, and developing pathways from research to solutions for positive social impact. He's joined by Mayssa Jallad, who is a researcher and citizen science coordinator with PROCOL Lebanon since January 2019. She's advised citizen-led interventions that involve several diverse communities. Mayssa has also written research-based music, and her work investigates the violent transformation of cities, just as her first album, Marja, The Battle of the Hotels, demonstrates. I hope I pronounced everything okay, and I'll hand over to the very capable hands of the PROCOL Lebanon team to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Just want to say it's a huge pleasure to be here. Thanks, Olivia, for the fantastic introduction, for hosting us. Thanks, Rana, for hosting us and for the invitation. We're really looking forward to sharing our experience from our research project and engaging in conversation with all of you. The second thing that I should say is that everyone should go and check out Mayssa's music because it's amazing. Mayssa recently did a show in London as part of her tour, and it was absolutely outstanding. One of the best shows that I've been to. So if you get a chance to see her live, definitely do so. But do go online and check out her music. And then the third thing before we get started is I want to say that we're joined by our whole team. So Rahav and Balasam are here as well. They're going to take part in the Q&A afterwards. I will let them introduce themselves later on. But I just wanted to say that we're here as a team, and we're really looking forward to kind of having a conversation about our work. So our project is on livelihood networks and political experience in Beirut, in Lebanon. And I'm just going to say very quickly what the aim of our project was at the start, and then I'll hand over to Mayssa to give a little bit of background on a little background and context on our research, and then we'll tell you what we did as part of our MENA social policy project. So the aim of our work was basically to think about what effective livelihood recovery strategies might look like for Lebanon, and how they could contribute to sort of politically inclusive visions for the future. So this is where the kind of livelihood and politics aspects come together. And just the one thing that I want to mention now before I hand over to Mayssa is that we really highlighted the importance in our work of looking at a multi-scalar approach. So we, on the one hand, looked at livelihood experiences on the ground, the way in which people were dealing with the economic crisis that Lebanon is going through, but we also looked at community networks and network building and use of networks as part of the strategy for coping with the crisis. We also looked at national politics and the kind of changing landscape of the political culture. And we also looked at international policy, specifically in relation to foreign assistance, which is absolutely crucial for understanding the economic circumstances of Lebanon today. So Mayssa, over to you.
Speaking of circumstances and context, so thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for the MENASP team, Rana and Olivia, for having us. So a bit on the livelihood crises that we have been living through in Lebanon for the past few years. There's been a devaluation of our local currency, and the inflation has skyrocketed so much so that $1 is equivalent right now almost to the largest banknote that we have in Lebanon. So this devaluation started actually in August 2019, and just a couple of months later, the October 17 uprisings started in Lebanon as a direct effect of some government policies that were being proposed. So people took to the streets, and the country kind of came to a halt, and a change was about to really take course. However, the outbreak of COVID-19 kind of quashed all protests. And in the meantime, this skyrocketing inflation meant that services and goods had to remain dollarized. So things started really costing a lot for people, and the dollarization of the entire economy was at play. This was coupled with shortages in medicine and fuel. So the picture that you see in the center of this slide is actually of the long fuel queues in the summer of 2021 that really were a nightmare in the country, as well as shortages in medicine that were also very difficult to overcome, hoarding practices that were very difficult to overcome. Of course, the port explosion. This is August 4th, 2020, a country that was, already feeling so much of the crisis and COVID-19, really was shocked by the port explosion due to kind of neglect and bad practices at the port. A huge explosion rocked the city. And then, of course, a banking crisis that was created from this entire skyrocketing inflation. People's money was stuck in banks, and depositors were orchestrating bank holdups to try to retrieve their money. And then, of course, most recently, the Israeli attacks on Gaza and in the south of Lebanon, which are ongoing and have further exacerbated this crisis, unfortunately. In terms of political culture, and what we've seen as a kind of political change in the past few years, so I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but in terms of political culture in Lebanon, it's a very specific kind of political system where it's based on sectarian power sharing. There are regional divisions in the country, and there are a multitude of political parties, a multitude of sectarian based parties and affiliations. And you can see here the results, for example, from the 2022 parliamentary elections, and the kind of tapestry of political parties that were able to win these elections. There's a network of clientelism which is existent in every political party and in every subscriber to these political parties, in that political parties give services actually to people, and therefore clientelism kind of trumps a lot of time over government services, which have become almost non-existent. So yeah, the institutions of the government have been weakened because of this clientelistic system, and there is a sectarian welfare system, which is also related to these political parties. On the other hand, due to this multiplicity of crises and the difficulties of just living in Lebanon these days, we've noticed that there are now and always, there have always been strong cultures of community-based initiatives, people helping out their neighborhood, because if they don't do it, who else will? That kind of mentality. And there's been a lot of activism, especially since the October 2019 uprising, but also before, with the garbage crisis, protests in 2015, before that with anti-sectarian crises, anti-sectarian protests. So activism is a huge part of life, I think, in Lebanon. And there are also beginnings of political transformation with, in 2022, these independents, which are the first color in this map. So independent candidates, independent members of parliaments were voted into parliament and are since then trying to start a change, trying to move things around, but it's been quite challenging, I must say. Our methodology. So how do we study all of these themes that I just mentioned? Citizen science is at the core of our approach. We have 3 project sites, which are in Beirut, in Tripoli, and in the Bekaa. We have actually 5 project sites, so 3 of them in Beirut, and 1 in Tripoli, and 1 in Bekaa. And the citizen science approach is really integral to what we do. Citizen science is basically hiring local researchers for everything from project design, so asking these local researchers if the research itself is appropriate to the setting and the context from which they are from, to actually conducting this research themselves, doing the work on the ground, to participating in the analysis of this research and the publishing of reports if they're interested, and then to designing community-based interventions. So this is a sustained approach through collaboration over multiple activities. And we found that the sustained approach is very meaningful to the citizen scientists, and it creates actually projects that are sustainable and have a long-term effect. Rahav has also worked on evaluations of the impact of these projects, and they are a basis for dialogue on policy change and other new projects that we will be talking to you about soon. So these are some of the projects that the citizen scientists have managed to maintain over the years. The one on the left is the newest citizen science project. It's called Mayl, and it's a community support initiative that recruits or finds the elderly in a specific community and encourages them to meet on a daily basis and organize activities, etc. So this Mayl community was created first for the community of Marib Khail, which was deeply affected by the Beirut blast in 2020. And so this community was isolated, it was traumatized from the blast, and it really needed support. So we decided to bring back the sense of neighborhood feeling. And the citizen scientists organized activities and weekly coffees, and that's still ongoing and has now a new iteration in another neighborhood in Beirut. So this is an ongoing and growing project. The column in the center is the Jouan online school, and it's an initiative that started in Hamra when two citizen scientists realized that there is a really huge amount of students or of children who are in the age of going to school who are actually out of school. And Hamra, which is a very influential, supposedly, neighborhood. So they realized that, and they wanted to create a school where volunteers from universities and people who are able to go to college can teach out-of-school children. It turned into an online platform, actually, because of COVID-19, and there was a kind of silver lining to that, in that it started reaching and teaching students from all over Lebanon. So what started as an initiative that is local is now open to students all over Lebanon who are out of school or who need after-school support. And now this initiative, this project has been taken over by an NGO that we are in close collaboration with, and it's growing even more. They opened a second class. The third intervention that we'd like to mention is a urban garden intervention. So Ghadir, our citizen scientist, created this beautiful seating area with planting, and she created this design in collaboration with the community. So she asked them for their opinions on it, and they gave great feedback, and because of this relationship they planted this area or this intervention with her, and this is still ongoing. And now Ghadir is working on a toolkit to create these interventions all over Lebanon.
Thanks, Mayssa. So I'm just going to say a little bit about the research that we did specifically for our MENASP project. So again, the aim was to explore what effective livelihood recovery strategies might look like, and how they can contribute to politically inclusive visions for better futures from within this context that Mayssa just presented. And the point that I like to emphasize here, which is just at the bottom of the slide, is that our approach to this has been to not seek a simple answer, because we cannot do that. It's not a simple question, but rather to create a program of research that includes multiple intersecting strands based on the one hand, the complexity of the situation, but on the other hand, our own background of research as a team, including all the work that we've been doing with citizen scientists and the interventions that Mayssa described. So the strands that we've been kind of focusing on have been on livelihoods, on politics, on community-based interventions, and on policy change. We've been very interested in trying to understand how policy transformation can take place in this rather challenging context. So I'm just going to say a little bit about each of these strands and the kind of data that we've been collecting and the kind of outputs that we've been generating from our work. So in terms of livelihoods, the sort of key question that we're interested in is how people make ends meet in this very difficult crisis. And also, what is the relationship between livelihood strategies and political experience? So to kind of try to address this question, we collected a series of ethnographic case studies and interviews with residents of the Ras Beirut neighborhood where we worked. Rahaf was leading on this, so she can say more about her experience later on if you're interested. But one of the sort of key outputs from this is a working paper which will hopefully be out in the next few days. It's currently in press. It's in production with the faculty. And I should just mention at this point that a lot of our data and research and findings are being published as working papers, but we are also in the process of trying to publish them as articles. It's just that working papers are much easier to get out quickly and make available and accessible to people, while articles can take months to go through the review process. So we're sharing with you some of the working papers. We've had one article accepted so far, so hopefully that will be out soon. But a lot of these working papers will be out as journal publications. So this is a working paper that we have on livelihood strategies after 2019. And what the findings reveal is that people have kind of adopted a number of practices to help them cope. And we categorize these practices in three key ways. So one is lifestyle changes. And this particularly has to do with living more austere lives, essentially. People use a lot less electricity. They have substituted a lot of the products that, a lot of the commodities and services that were previously using for cheaper alternatives. So, for example, people have been forced to eat a lot less meat, and numerous other sort of lifestyle changes that allow people to live within their budgets in the context of inflation and the banking crisis and their savings being locked out. Another strategy category was increased reliance on networks. So these are both networks internally within their own neighborhood, sometimes within their own building, people working together with their neighbors, sharing food, things like that, within the neighborhood, within the country, and sometimes internationally as well. A lot of people have started to rely more on remittances from friends and relatives abroad, and a lot of people have also emigrated as a result of the crisis to find employment opportunities elsewhere. And then the third strategy is increased reliance on institutions, including religious institutions, political institutions, NGOs that can offer support to people. And what we found in the data is that the fact that people were essentially forced by circumstances to adopt these strategies had very significant implications for trust in governance stakeholders. People often complemented or supplemented rather discussion about their livelihood circumstances with expressions of disillusionment with politicians, with the government, with NGOs. So there was a lot of mistrust, quite a bit of discontent as well. Our research on politics asked what the political discourses, practices of mobilization, and political orientations that define the political landscape of Lebanon today are. What are these processes, and what are the challenges and possibilities that this political landscape presents for pathways to better livelihoods, services, and social protection measures. Mayssa talked earlier about the sectarian power sharing system, and also about the emergence of new independent political parties in the last election in 2022. So this is already a kind of the beginning of a change in the landscape that has traditionally been highly dominated by established political parties. Politics is still dominated by these established parties, but the last election marked the beginning or a small transformation in any case. So the data that our team collected for this work was social media observations around the election, semi-structured interviews with people, ethnographic observations of election voting on election day, and also we did quite a bit of policy analysis on the negotiations between the Lebanese government and the IMF with respect to a major loan and the sort of conditions that were set by the IMF and what the possible consequences would be if that loan sort of went through. And then the key outputs from this work were a paper on the election and a paper on the IMF loan, and you can have a look at both of those. They're freely available. Then just very quickly about community-based interventions and the citizen science work that Mayssa mentioned. Because we're interested in value creation, in livelihoods recovery, we were very interested to do a piece of work on how these community capacities, the ability of communities to kind of build their own projects, to create their own value, how they generate impact. So the interventions that you heard about earlier, the educational community center, the urban garden, we used them essentially to carry out further research and to evaluate what their impact was for users, and how the fact that they were created within the community made a difference to users. So Rahab did a series of interviews with, on the one hand, the citizen scientists who developed the interventions, but also with users, so the parents of the children who were in this educational program, the users who used this urban garden. And the finding was that the fact that they were community-based and the fact that they were co-designed made a huge difference in terms of generating social value. People felt a sense of trust. People felt that the interventions were there for them, to benefit them. There was no suspicion, which often exists with other service providers, and we have been trying to sort of make a case that this community-based engaged project generates a certain kind of sociality that enhances the impact for users and the kind of economic value that the services themselves provide. So social value becomes the condition for enhancing and increasing economic value. So this work has been written up and submitted to a journal. It's now been accepted, so hopefully it will be out soon, the International Review of Qualitative Research. And this is actually the third article by myself, Mayssa, and other colleagues on citizen science. We had another one in the International Journal of Social Research Methodology, kind of setting our agenda for citizen science. We had a second one in the International Journal of Qualitative Methods on the possibility for participatory research to develop these kinds of interventions in the community, and the way in which long-term collaboration with citizen scientists accumulates knowledge within our team. And now this is a paper on the evaluation and the social value that is created by this work. And we're thinking about it as work that has important consequences for policy, actually, because of the evidence that it provides about what happens when there is investment in communities and community-based projects, as opposed to sort of having services coming from outside without community engagement. So it's really about the value of sociality in building economies that work for quality of life. And then finally, we've been very interested in policy change. And the key question for us has been, how is evidence-based policy change possible in a context of sectarian and political divisions and strong clientelist networks? So we have been treating this as an empirical question. We did a workshop back in September on the role of research in policy change in Lebanon. We had a number of presentations where people shared their experience of carrying out research, doing activism, doing policy change, working for policy think tanks. We had one of the independent MPs come and speak at our event, MP Ibrahim Namni, who is there in that photo on the right. And this was something that was extremely useful for us in kind of building our networks and continuing the research that we did. We presented on some of our research on livelihoods and livelihood strategies. We engaged in conversation with colleagues, and we were able to establish a couple of partnerships that have led to kind of ongoing collaborations with researchers, activists, and policymakers. So more on that forthcoming. And then just very quickly to share some of our ideas on future research. We have three sort of emerging research projects that we want to work on as continuation of this work. One is creating pathways to bottom-up policy change through research interventions and activism. So this is a kind of collaboration that was inspired from the last workshop that I mentioned. Another is exploring the possibility of universal basic services as a mechanism for livelihood recovery. So we're we're short on time, so I don't want to get into an prolonged explanation here. If people are interested to learn more about UBS, we can discuss it in the Q&A. But we essentially realized that some of the interventions that we built are pilots in universal basic service provision. So we want to make new interventions in that conversation, which is really growing in the UK and elsewhere. And the final project that we're very interested in kind of working on to build on our previous data and outputs is on understanding coloniality and decoloniality through citizen science. And there's a number of things to say about that, but one of the main points is that a lot of the scholarship on coloniality is done by academic experts who might have very different voices and experiences and backgrounds being in the academy from people on the ground who are directly impacted by new colonial practices. So we want to kind of work with our citizen scientists in the different sites and to try to understand how from their perspective and from the experiences of challenges to livelihoods and specific kinds of relations to governance stakeholders, not just politicians locally, but also their understanding of the kind of international processes that are happening around assistance, international assistance and aid, how they're experiencing coloniality, what it means to them, and kind of have a bottom-up conversation about understandings of coloniality in this context. So that's it from us. This is what we've been up to in the past year and a half or so with our work. And we're really looking forward to hearing your views and your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikolay, Mayssa, and Balsam, and thank you all for the great work. Sorry I joined a little bit late this morning, and thank you everyone for joining this webinar. So we have about 15 minutes left, and we would very much like to invite questions and feedback to our presenters. So you're very welcome to put your question in the chat or just intervene directly and ask, and feel free to put your cameras on as well. It's always nice to see people. So who'd like to go first? Okay, so while there is this silence and people are probably just thinking about their questions, I'll come in if that's okay with a question, please, Nikolay and ladies. And thank you very much again for this really interesting research. It was a real pleasure to work with you through this MENASP conflict prevention and social policy grant. So my immediate, perhaps very obvious and simple question is, how do you scale up this approach of citizen researchers? And sort of, I think you've highlighted well the strengths of the approach. And only because it has strengths, that's why I'm asking. So it's not about, well, what are its limitations, but how can this scale up? You know, perhaps there are natural sort of positive effects at the community level, or other approaches that you could tell us about. So scalability and sustainability as well, please, if you'd like to comment, speakers. Thank you.
Oh, there's lots to say. Mayssa, do you want to?
Yeah. So I think there are multiple ways of scaling up. One of them is actually encouraging citizen science projects all over the world. And I think introducing this methodology to people, namely through the Citizen Science Academy that the Institute for Global Prosperity has set up, whether in the UK or of course in Lebanon where we are, and encouraging and just introducing this methodology to people might spark up this interest, first of all. Second way of scaling up that we're now thinking about is how do you bring co-design and bottom-up approaches to policy? Like how do you actually make it required for government projects to consult people? And one way of doing that is through citizen science. So this is a new, I think, venture that we're trying to think about in Lebanon, and through introducing this methodology to MPs and people who do work in policy, this can be a first way forward towards scaling up. But yeah, it's actually, I think it's introducible in every single project. You can work with local researchers in every project that you do with the community, and actually the benefits are so amazing, and the kind of projects that you get by involving community in that way from the very beginning. Like, we're talking about very in-depth collaboration. I think it's so meaningful, and the impact is so big actually with these people's lives.
Could I just add a couple of things to what Mayssa said? I think for me, something that's been very interesting and powerful really is the fact that when we first present the idea of citizen science, work with members of the community, train them in research, do the data collection, possibly build interventions and projects, there is a lot of skepticism. People say, oh, you're not going to be able to do it because you're not going to find researchers who are skilled enough, people are going to drop out, and so on and so forth. So when we actually managed to do these projects, people's minds obviously changed. They said, okay, it is possible, but also we've had a huge amount of interest in our work. We've had people inviting us to collaborate with them on citizen science, saying we want to incorporate this community-based approach in our research. We would like to collaborate with you to do that. Mayssa and I were recently approached by the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, actually, to talk about our work on citizen science. So we did an interview, and it was published as a short piece. And then the other thing is that at the Institute for Global Prosperity, we have other sites across the world where we work with a similar kind of citizen science approach. We do it in Kenya, in Tanzania, in the UK.
London.
And one of the things that we've been really advancing now is collaboration and knowledge exchange between different sites. So I think making it work, promoting the lessons learned, and just getting the message out there that research can be done with or in accordance with specific kinds of principles of collaboration and democracy, and it can lead to really fantastic outcomes. That has been part of how we envisage the scaling up process, and I think step by step it's working.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and it's nice. So it looks like it's an approach that can be developed further, yeah, and hopefully with research that you can continue to do. So that's fantastic. So there's a question in the chat from a very close colleague and expert on Lebanon. So Amal Karaki, lovely to have you, Amal. So I'll read out the question. How is the selection of the citizen science researchers done? And do you involve municipalities in this approach?
The selection is done very closely with the team. We basically put out a call for local researchers. It's a public call, so anybody usually can apply. We don't use the word citizen science first because, and actually citizen science in Arabic is bahith mahalli, because we want to include all people, not just citizens, right? So we put out a call. We sometimes reach out to local organizations to recommend and tell people to apply in that way. So our local partners in any site. And then we look through the applications and we make sure that the profile is of somebody who first of all knows the local community really well, has either lived or worked there for a long time. Second of all, that they are curious and that they like to talk to people. I think this is something very important, that they're not intimidated by talking to people. And third of all, that they understand the importance of research and the kind of pace of research, and what we're asking from them is kind of a rigorous methodology. We're training them in everything, but I think it's also important that they see the value in doing research in their community, and that they kind of understand the thread that research can lead to change and impact in communities. So this is kind of what we look for when we're recruiting, and you know, it's a very interesting process, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but we're always, you know, looking for lessons learned in who we recruit and etc. Do we involve municipalities in this approach? Actually, so far we have not involved municipalities in selecting citizen science researchers. I think the role of municipalities since the crisis has been really difficult to be engaged with. Municipalities are connected to our projects in that if we want to organize a public event, we ask for their approval. We've been involved with the muhafiz, maybe rather than a municipality. So the muhafiz, governor, exactly, has attended a few of our events and is in close collaboration actually with members of our team at the AUB to be able to do interventions on the ground. But the selection of citizen scientists happens within this team and has kind of evolved and grown as a method of recruitment since I would say since 2018, when we recruited our first group of citizen scientists in Hamra. And actually, Rahaf was a citizen scientist, so she can tell you more about that experience. She later moved on to becoming a research assistant for us, so we obviously really loved working with Rahaf, and her role evolved. Rahaf, actually, would you like to say a word about your experience as a citizen scientist in Ras Beirut?
Sure, yeah. So kind of what you were saying, I found the call on Dalil Madani, which is a platform where a lot of civil society organizations and the research centers upload their work positions. So I found it there. I had no idea what citizen science was at that time, but I understood that it's like locally based research. So that's why I applied. I had some experience previously just through my master's degree with doing qualitative methods. So I was excited to put that into practice. And yeah, it worked out. So the training was like essential, at least to introduce the people to citizen science itself, rather than specifically how to do the research. And yes, like having the opportunity to work in a co-design approach was something really important. And the interaction between the citizen scientists and taking their opinion and their views and their experiences in their neighborhoods into account was very essential, I think. Working on the ground was a bit tough because, as we were just discussing, the situation in Lebanon was hectic. We were in the middle of the crises. That summer, we had also the electricity cuts, the fuel cuts. So people were already in a bad state of mind, and we were trying to approach them, to ask them about these questions specifically. So it was a bit tough, but thankfully people in Lebanon like to talk and to share their struggles, because more or less we know that although we experience these struggles on different levels, we all share them together, because it's not even about your class anymore. It's just about something that's imposed on you. So, and we helped each other, the citizen scientists. If someone had more strength in approaching people and another had a strength in another sector in the process, we went into groups and helped each other. And it was a very nice experience. And thankfully, then I went, you had a call for, PROCOL had a call for doing ethnographies, and I applied, and the rest is history, as I'm a research assistant now.
Yeah, so there's a real diversity, I think, also that is worth mentioning in who is recruited and who applies for being citizen scientists. We don't really focus on an academic profile or an age group or anything else. Yeah, so I think what's most important for us is when we feel that a person is engaged in their community and understands the value of research. I think that's, I would say, most important thing.
Excellent. And indeed, I mean, I'm immediately drawing parallels as well with citizen journalists, because that's been a phenomenon of the last few years. And thinking about how the citizen researcher compares and contrasts with sort of social and political activism. I mean, there's a lot of parallel activities that citizens do, but I suppose the key thing is to maintain the citizen identity. Yeah, or I mean, interesting. I'd be curious to know if your colleague who just spoke, does she now see herself for the Rahaf as a 100% researcher, or what happens to the citizen bit? So there's all these interesting dynamics I think that you've brought up. So Nikolay, you've got your hand up. This is your space. Don't worry about putting your hand up, but thank you for doing so. And no questions in the chat. Yes.
I just wanted to respond very quickly to this point, because there's a very important point to be made here, which is that many of the citizen scientists have other jobs and other professions and other careers and life paths. And what ends up happening is they bring in the skills from these professions into the team that otherwise would not be on the team. I mean, how on earth are Mayssa or myself going to build an urban agriculture installation? Or how are we going to, teach kids provide schooling for kids? So the fact that we have people with other kinds of skills and expertise, the citizen scientists who did the educational intervention, they're teachers by training. So they had the skills and knowledge to do that. The citizen scientist who built the urban agriculture installation, the planters, she's an urban planner, so she knows how to build an installation like this. And the fact that we work and collaborate with citizens who have other kinds of professional skills really makes a huge difference.
I also want to add, the idea of citizen. I think that Rana, you focused on. As I said, not all citizen scientists are citizens. We have citizen scientists from from all over the Arab world, actually, who just live in Beirut or live in Lebanon. And so this idea of citizenship kind of became transformed into the idea of community. What do what is it? How do you conduct research? How do you make your community better? How do you contribute to your community's well-being? It is a kind of activism, if you think about it, or it is a kind of political statement in contributing to the well-being of your society through research and then through interventions that you would propose. That there is a strong sense of community that the citizen scientists feel to even want to be involved in a project like this on the long term from the first place. So they know their community, but also they care. There is a sense of care for their community, and therefore maybe it's close to our idea of what a good citizen is. But yeah, I think we don't use the word citizen in Arabic just for that, for more inclusion.
Right. Very interesting.
Rana, may I interfere?
Yeah.
Okay. My worry here, okay, you don't want to call it citizen, but I was wondering, what's your multiplier effect of this methodology? Is this for the benefit of the researcher alone? Although you are saying that you want to improve the livelihood of the community, but were you able to validate this by this method or approach? Really, the community livelihood has been improved? Were you able to integrate all members of the community? And you started, I asked you about your, whether you were able to involve municipalities. You said you mainly deal with the governor. Although it's a community-based approach, I think the governor is far away from the community. Sometimes he doesn't know what's going on in those communities. So probably the more down to earth you are from my experience, I'm sorry to say it, the better it is for the sustainability of your projects and so on and so forth.
Actually, while you were talking about the municipality, I just remembered that for our project in Tripoli, in El Mina, the municipality was highly involved from the very beginning. They were part of the stakeholder workshop, and then we did the town hall with them, and we shared the data with them, and they were also part of the problem and solution activity. So it is 100% true that municipalities need to be more involved. It's just the municipality of Beirut that is quite difficult to include. I would say.
Like one
With
point.
Balsam, if you'd like to add as well.
So it's completely true, but involving municipalities, especially after the 2019, the start of the financial crisis, if you want, and afterwards, and the marginalization of municipal budgets, it became quite difficult to involve the municipality in any community-based project without them wanting something budgetary, like budget allocations in return or donations or etc. So there's a bit of a political thing here. So it was very difficult to convince municipalities of social interventions, just the idea of social interventions, and now it's much harder because of budgetary issues. But that doesn't mean that we need to not involve municipalities. We continuously try, and just because the last two interventions of ours were an iteration of a project that was done, we didn't mainly have the municipality as a stakeholder. But in big projects like the one that Mayssa was discussing in El Mina, which was basically to produce a prosperity index, the municipality
And we constantly, so for example, we have an upcoming project of a street rehabilitation, like a consultation to figure out if how a street should be improved, and the municipality should definitely be involved. I mean, this is you can't really do a project like that. But with regards, without the municipality, but with regards to the first part of your question, the evaluations have clearly shown that the community that benefits from these interventions was really grateful for the presence of these interventions and for the methodology itself, I think, for having been involved from the very beginning by these citizen scientists. So yes, we have seen that there is a clear benefit for the community from these interventions. On the scale of the intervention itself, of course, the question is, how do you scale up? And this is actually something that we're constantly trying to work on and improve and scale up.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I'm just mindful of the time, and I see Abir's got her hand up. So if it's okay, thank you, everyone. A really rich discussion. We'll hear Abir's question or comment, and then we'll have to bring the webinar to a close, I'm afraid. Thank you. Thank you, Abir, for waiting patiently.
Thank you, Rana. Thank you, colleagues. It's a great initiative to hear about. I always follow MENASP work, so I have the opportunity to attend this webinar. I have a few comments. So I work for UNICEF, but I have been in the local development work for the past 20 years and working closely with local authorities. Mrs. Amal shared initially her comment on how to anchor this initiative into municipalities to make it sustainable. Just to say that this is a great opportunity, and we have been seeing, I mean, some similar initiative, or at least I participated in some of these initiatives by Catalyst, by PAR, the Participatory Approach Research, an initiative also by BOAT, and I think linked to AUB. We've done a lot of work around COVID. But my question here, and I mean, we have a estimate researcher, and this is comments and the question, Rana, how to make those initiatives sustainable? We've seen a lot of project linked and linked to fund and linked to opportunities that rarely we've seen in at least the big municipality you mentioned and where you are work in. A sustainable platform where those citizens / resident in a community are committed beyond the project itself, beyond the funding itself, beyond the maybe the individual goal or objective as a research, as a student, as a master's student. And we've been in some initiative linked with Balamand University in the north, with AUB on some of the projects related to health and nutrition. And it's always compounded, unfortunately, and fortunately, because it's on the impact is directly seen on the community when the project is achieved. But beyond that, and this is a big question, we're not able to see a sustainable engagement of the citizens or those young people or researchers. The anchoring with the municipality could be and is a potential, but definitely, as colleagues were mentioning, the challenges that municipalities are facing. You mentioned MENA. MENA has been dismantled municipality since 2017. Sorry, 2018. So how do we do we consider this sustainability and effect and bring it at scale? My other question is, how much have we or maybe done a learning from the different experience and approach that UNDP has used, UN Habitat, many USAID programs that have used similar approach with different names and concepts, obviously. So yeah, I stop here. Over. Thank you.
Thank you, Abir. These are amazing questions.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry to jump in. I think, can I sadly bring the meeting to a close and ask colleagues to reconnect offline? Or Mayssa, did you want to respond there quickly?
Can I respond really quickly?
Abir was making a comment, sorry.
I wanted to respond really quickly.
Yeah. Okay.
So far for our interventions, what's been really interesting is so some of these interventions started in 2019 and are still ongoing until now. So this is a good 5 years of interventions that are we're still working with citizen scientists on them because they care deeply about them, because they are their own interventions. So these are interventions that have been founded, designed, proposed by them. So these are become personal projects. So I think that in terms of sustaining, it's much more effective when you do that. Another example is actually another citizen scientist, a citizen scientist taking over a colleague's intervention, for example, or even a citizen scientist replicating a intervention in another site that matters to them. So there have been these very interesting experiences of this sustained approach, and we've done everything in our power to actually keep these interventions running. And it's the sense of care and community, I think, that really shines through. So for example, the elderly support program, this was funded in Mar Mikhael, as I said, and then one of the citizen scientists in Mar Mikhael decided to replicate his project in another site, and now there's another site coming up. So it's going to Ras Naba, and then it's going to Ras Beirut, and it's growing and growing. And this citizen scientist in particular has his own NGO, so he's integrated the work of his NGO with this research/intervention project. So there's no one-size-fits-all scenario, but we do believe that if citizen scientists care deeply about their interventions, there is an opportunity for sustaining it beyond the short span of, what a project is supposed to be. And we like to hand over to the community. This is also something very important. So for the Mayil community, it's very important for us to say, okay, the citizen scientists are helping you now, but we're handing over this project. This project is for you. And this is what happened in Mar Mikhael. Now, the elderly of Mar Mikhael meet every Monday at 5 p.m. It's not us who tell them to meet, but they've created this kind of routine and the sense of responsibility that they've created their own community, and there is a handover, there is a kind of stewardship that occurs. So yeah, sustainability is something we talk about and think about a lot, and we really think about it in every single one of our projects and think of creative solutions to make these interventions last for a long time.
That's fantastic, Mayssa. Thank you again. And sorry, I hope I didn't sound rude by interrupting and saying to try and wrap up. Yeah, sorry, I know there's...
It was too good of a question not to answer, so thank you, Abir.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. It was like partly comment question, so sorry. But I think this is fantastic. And I really, obviously we all wish you all the best in developing this research and growing it. And I hope you all connect with each other. It's been a pleasure to host you again and to hear more about your work and to get to know you, as well, all of you. So thank you again. And my kind of last thought and this is no need to respond, but just throwing it out there, is whether you can think about creating a network or supporting a network of these community researchers so that they perhaps connect with each other and share experiences, and they themselves over time can build the synergy and build a strong sense of identity, perhaps on top of what they already have. So this is just a thought, but again, wishing you all the best. Clearly this is research that's very firmly within the field of civil society, and I hope that you'll find continuing support and funding support for it. Would you like to say final words as speakers, presenters, just before we say goodbye?
Yeah, for me, just to say that I've really enjoyed this webinar, and to say thanks to everyone for being here and for your questions. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, everybody. Really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Thank you all. I hope you have a good day, and thank you, Olivia, for opening the event for us. Wishing you all the best, and we meet soon, hopefully. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.